Thank you, Michelle, for joining XRO podcast, which is India's first AR/VR MR podcast. So, to the listeners who don't know about you, I'm going to give them like a brief introduction, and then we can jump dive into the conversation. So, Mr. Michel Reilhac is a narrative architect and a long-time transmedia and immersive media pioneer. So, Mr. Reilhac was the head of film acquisitions at Arte France for many years and executive director of Arte France Cinema, where he co-produced an average of 30 films per year, including the hit film Antichrist and Melancholia by Lars von Trier. In 2013, he was elected Man of the Year in film by the trade magazine Les Films Français. Michel's career includes creation as a contemporary dancer and producer of the world's tour for major dance troupes. Currently, he is the head of Submarine Channel, and he's also the curator of the VR Venice Biennale International Film Festival. It's a pleasure and honor to have you, Michel. Really appreciate this doing for us and talking to us. So I just read this news lately, about this thing that you're building, and I was very eager to talk to you about. So I heard that you and curators of other film festivals are working on building a platform dedicated to showcase selected and award-winning VR experiences. So can you share a little bit more details about that?
Yes, this is very much a work in progress that we started. My idea is quite simple, is to start from the fact that if we want VR to be a full-fledged art form, but also a market with people, paying for the content, which is the prerequisite for any ecosystem to be self-sustainable, showing the work needs to generate income. So we were thinking of what we can do collectively as festivals to facilitate the transition from the exposure that films get when they are selected in a festival to being available on a marketplace. So the idea is to create a partnership with an existing distribution platform of immersive content in 6DOF and 3DOF, whereby they would create a brand called the Festival Collection. And the participating festivals would share with this platform the list of the selected pieces that they have in their festival. And each piece, from the moment they are selected by one of us, by one of the festivals, would be eligible to be under the umbrella of this brand on that platform. They would be offered a commercial contract by the platform. They would be able to enter into discussions and negotiations around this contract, but only those projects that will have been selected by at least one festival will be eligible to enter this label, this brand of the Festival Collection. So this is a way to maximize the impact of the selection by one of the prestigious festivals that are participating in this project, and use that impact so that it can create an aggregated effect for the viewers, for people who are interested in quality content in VR, and they would find those pieces reunited, assembled under the label, the Festival Collection.
Right. So this is obviously for those pro VR filmmakers, right? The cream immersive content creators around the world, But like you said, at this point in time, there's huge problem with monetization and distribution. What can be done to create an ecosystem where we involve everyone? Because, if you go to see, I kind of like directed a VR film, back in 2016. It's called Crackle. It did the festival circuit. And right now, obviously, there's just, I've got one buyout to China, and that's about it. There's not much movement. So I'm sure there are so many others like you are all around the world who understand that this is the future of narrative, the future of storytelling. But, besides obviously the cream of cream with the top filmmakers, I think we need to engage, these small filmmakers, because I see there are these bunch of kids who are like really, really going for it. They're pushing the boundary with VR filmmaking. So how can we create an ecosystem where besides just looking at these big players who obviously are winners of festivals, a part of film festival, how can we create an ecosystem where we get everyone, right from the corners of possibly India, Bangladesh, Africa, because this medium has got huge potential. But right now, if you see, most of the attention, like even what you're doing, is for the cream filmmakers. How do we get inclusive, get everybody involved?
Yeah, it's a very good question. You are right in saying that it's about creating an ecosystem for all. Right now, the problem is that quality content, narrative content, creative content that are not games or apps are sort of drowned inside platforms that do not recognize them as a genre in itself. And I think the field is now ready to sort of sort the content by genre. For instance, if I'm looking for a game, I need a place where I know I will find games and the best games as well. If I want to see apps and, educational content or training content, I need a place where I can go and find this. In the same way, I think we need a place where we can find creative content, story-driven content, and those contents that, like you said, are pushing the boundaries of the form. So it will not happen overnight. It needs a little bit of time for that system to build itself. So I think because no one can do everything at the same time, our job with the festivals is, like you say, to serve the best selection. For the other ones, like for instance, the process of selecting for a festival is quite a complex one. For instance, for Venice VR, we watch maybe up to 200 pieces that are submitted to us, and we select 30 for the competition. So we watch a lot of new works, and mind you, we can only show world premieres or international premieres. So that weeds out a lot of other pieces that have been shown in other places before. But not everything is of the same level, of the same quality. And as much as some of the makers are incredibly well-intended and they are doing their best, there is a difference in the success of how a piece is delivered. So I feel that it is worthwhile to start by creating an entry point where we offer, like I said, on the festival collection, the best, the cream of the cream of what is being done. Hopefully, the intention is that by doing this, we will create a sort of an entry point. And as we grow this system, more pieces can be added to this system. For instance, the intention is that maybe after 2 or 3 years of doing this principle, of showing in the festival collection the pieces that will have been selected by at least one festival, maybe we can start adding another section, which will be for works that have not been selected in the festivals, that are coming from all corners of the world, and that are invited maybe to join, to be on that platform with a different kind of contract. But I think it's a question of starting by seducing the audience, the potential audience for this kind of new art form, by offering them what is best so that they are seduced into it. And then everything can follow, in the wake of those pieces.
Right. I completely agree. So tell me, this is my perspective. Now, I have been a musician. I used to play for a rock band. I've played for a rock band for 15, 20 odd years. Then I have an audio studio, video studio, where I produce content for production houses over here, for specifically for advertising, agencies and production houses and things like that. Now, through my 15 years career, I've realized there has been a shift. When I started playing music, there were these LPs, then went down to CDs, Then there was this cassettes, and then it got digitized. The music got digitized, and when music got digitized, the entire world changed. There was this. I mean, early days. Obviously, the record labels were scamming the artist. The money was going over there. Then when the music got digitized, then all the artists got canned, because then they suddenly realized that monetization was a huge problem. Now everybody, like, at least, I mean, it's my perspective, I feel that the world has started to believe that art should be free. They're looking at free downloads. They want to get on the torrent side, download movies, and there is, as an artist, it's getting more and more difficult to survive. When you're doing a regular job, you know that you're getting a salary. Or when when you're an entrepreneur, this is what you're doing and this is what you're getting. But as an artist, it's getting more and more difficult for an artist to survive. Is this self-inflicted, what we have done to ourselves? And do you see a way out of this situation?
It's a very tricky one, but at the same time, as you're right in saying it's difficult to survive, I'm seeing that both in the music world, but also in the audiovisual content world, people are starting to accept to pay, but to pay differently. The big shift is the shift towards subscription models. When you take the example of Netflix, which really built the standards for this, you are paying a flat fee to access a very wide range of content. Then how do these contents share the income that a platform like Netflix is raising? And there are very complex algorithms, to share the income. When you look at YouTube channels, how the income is shared. I mean, it's ridiculous. The percentage of what goes back to the artist is so low, and unless you're in the way top, range of traffic, then you don't make anything. So I think it's a question of developing that model and developing the algorithms. I think also that the Bitcoin model, if it manages to set foot into the industry more and more, will provide an option to the artist directly to not only generate income directly, but also track their income directly. I hope that this will be a way to link the usage of the artwork to the income generated by it and to the artist more directly, because the gatekeepers of today are those platforms that are keeping most of the income, right? So we're in the middle of this shift. And I think that the subscription model has a huge impact on how we operate, and it needs to mature in a way that the artists are gaining more control over the income that their work generates. And I think the Bitcoin world is a strong possibility for this.
Right. Yeah. I'm completely with you on that. Yeah, blockchain holds the potential to create a transparent world, and yeah, but then there are these powers that be who are blocking this technology, because I mean, if you see at this point, the world is so deeply divided. I think 1% of the global elite owns 95% of the global wealth and resources. So yes, and the gatekeepers, you said, gatekeepers of the content out there are these tech behemoths. At one point in time, there were these rock stars. We used to look up to them. Jim Morrison and Axl Rose and the actors we used to look. But right now, it's taken a turn. We're looking at Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg. The world is changing drastically. So you are the curator of Venice VR Films. You are privy to some of the top immersive content creators. So can you talk about some experiences that have left you completely amazed? And do you think immersive narrative storytelling is the future of content?
I think that the we're about to witness the advent of immersive media in general in different ways. When Facebook will launch Horizon, its own immersive social platform, it will probably have an impact on a lot of people. I'm not sure that it is a good thing, and I will explain why. I for myself, I'm completely leaving the social networks. I refuse to use them anymore in this way because I feel that Facebook has the most destructive impact on our civilization that we've seen. I think it's responsibility in the degradation of politics. The circulation of fake news is huge, and I do not want to be participating into this. So I've canceled my accounts on WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, anything related to this, and trying to migrate to other ways of communicating that seem to offer a bigger independence, like Signal or Telegram. I do think that when we think of what is strong in immersive arts today, we need to think of two different things. There is, on the one hand, the option that immersive technologies offer to artists to create work, and that is completely fascinating. On the other hand, there is the use of the immersive technologies for social platforms, and I think that can be incredibly destructive. But there's a place where the two are used together, and this is where I have seen the most exciting artworks recently, and in the selection we had in Venice VR this year, under the form of performances, live performances, pieces where you are in the same space and in the same time through your avatars with the performers, and the performers are acting live, but also interacting with you as the viewer, as if you were on stage with them. And you end up going through fiction experiences where you become an active performer in the piece. Even if you're only watching, you are invited to be there with them, interact with them if you want. There's even a piece that we showed where one spectator was invited to be the main character in a science fiction story. This is very, very new. And this is something that the technology allows, and it's a mix of immersive creative technology with the use of existing or built for the sake of the piece platforms, social platforms. There is a very, very new platform called Neos, Neos, which was used to host a piece called The Meta Movie Presents Alien Rescue. That was the science fiction piece I was referring to. And that is, to me, one of the most sophisticated and advanced social platform where you can be many together at the same time doing works. But also using existing platforms like VR chat, for instance, has proven to be a very, very exciting platform to create live performance works that are interactive. And one of the 3 awards of this year went to such a piece called Finding Pandora X, which was entirely developed and designed inside VR chat, where you would attend the live event and live performance, including learning how to fly with the performers inside the VR chat world. So to me, this possibility of being together, particularly in these COVID times, to be together through our avatars, experiencing fiction moments, fiction adventures together, is an incredibly exciting development. What I would be very careful about is when those social platforms reproduce all the stereotyped behaviors that we are seeing happening on platforms like Facebook, which I think are destructive, not only socially, but also individually, because they format identities and social interconnections in an incredibly narrow way and a standardized way, which is very destructive for our own lives.
Right. Yeah. But the sad thing is the world today celebrates, when you're narrow and yeah, so and yeah, obviously it's a funky. You're talking about COVID, it obviously has deeply and terribly impacted the entertainment industry. Now theaters have been shut for over 6 months over here in India. Now I believe that James Bond movie, which they wanted to release it in this month, has now been pushed for a 2021 release. Now, one of the finest filmmakers of all time, Christopher Nolan, took a big gamble of releasing Tenet during a pandemic. So somehow I feel that rigidity can kill, because I'm sure the producers who have put in those big bucks behind the film are like deeply hurting, because of the move of releasing it on in theaters right now. But some of the smart filmmakers are releasing their content on digital network. And today, if you see, young filmmakers are leveraging technology and creating great content with very, very little budget. They're leveraging game engines like Unreal, Unity, which can create photorealistic content. So this, I'm sure, must be very disturbing to these big post-production studios that charge a bomb, because I also have a studio. Now there are these kids who are sitting at their home and doing photorealistic content. Now there is something called as virtual production, which allows you to merge the physical and the virtual world, allowing directors to not just depend on imagination, but to view the final graphics of VFX to be rendered real time on the set. So is technology going to be the most important tool for storytelling going forward?
It's definitely going to be a tool that is at the same time more and more sophisticated and more accessible. I would like to add to what you were saying about the way the cinema industry is going. The fact that the Disney studios have engaged in a battle, saying that they're considering that from now on, their main outlet for their content is going to be the digital networks and no longer the theater circuit, which is a major blow, in this crisis. Because if major studios like Disney are starting to say, listen, we're going to go and release our films where the people are, which are on the digital networks, that's where we're going to go, because that's where people are. And we're not going to consider the theater circuit as the prime circuit to release the films. That is a major change, in the strategy from studios that will impact theaters. So when you see, this year, for instance, we showed a piece by Jon Favreau. Jon Favreau is the director of The Lion King. And as you know, The Lion King was made entirely using a virtual reality set, which allowed the team and the director to pre-visualize everything they did and make choices based on the actual vision of what it would look like. That is a major change. For the moment, this kind of technology applied to making a flat film remains very costly and very a luxury, for the richest. But very quickly, this concept of using, like you said, Unity or Unreal as driving engines to design, but also make artistic choices on the spur of the moment, based on what you actually see for the directors, that's going to become more and more accessible in smaller versions. So technology is only a tool, and yes, it will facilitate making films, but it will never take away the inspiration, and the idea, the talent of the visionary of the director. that will remain what makes the difference. And you've started even seeing films made by artificial intelligences that are sort of clean, slick, and sort of make sense, but they completely lack a soul. They completely lack the imperfection, the approximation, the intuition that only a human talent can do. And I think the more we will be watching incredibly slick content, the more we will appreciate the imperfections of smaller productions and the human touch that goes into not being sure and trying and asking questions more than having answers, for instance. And I think this is never going to go. The technology will become more and more sophisticated and more usable, but the message, the intention, the emotional reach of a story will always remain dependent on the human soul behind it.
But I mean, if you go there, there is some really crazy things happening in the artificial intelligence space. So Black Mirror, their episode Bandersnatch on Netflix showcased the glimpse of what's possible with interactive storytelling. I know of content creators who are working on building interactive narratives, which branches out into multiple narratives leveraging AI. So currently, I think we're just scratching the surface with haptic feedback, which can give you which can enable you to feel the virtual world. And then there's this volumetric video, which is just about, taking shape. Now, what are your views on interactive storytelling and the role of artificial intelligence in the new age storytelling? So you said the artificial intelligence, obviously it's in a very basic stage. So now I'm saying, what happens possibly 50 years down the line, because there are these companies who are working on building artificial general intelligence. What happens in a world where machines have human level intellect? What happens to storytelling then?
Once again, I think there will be different levels. I think there will be products, issued from artificial intelligence, machine learning processes that will be more and more sophisticated. But as this grows, I have a strong feeling that a sort of a counterculture will emerge and become stronger and stronger of non-technological storytelling. For instance, the more we will go into sophisticated VR experiences, the more we will want real life experiences that are based on no technology and purely human interface. I wouldn't be surprised if we see the development of campfire, storytelling, of people just telling stories to each other with no technology whatsoever. So talking about the future of artificial intelligence and machine learning is, we need to be aware that when we consider this, we are looking at something that requires a lot of means, a lot of money, a lot of scale. And we cannot look at this as being the only way. I think it's a very interesting thing. For instance, if applied to the field of what everyone's calling right now digital twinning, in which our avatars will become perfect doubles of ourselves, and then we will have those doubles, our digital twins, active, by themselves. For instance, we will be able to have our digital twin attend an event, record the event, and bring it back to us so that we can watch it, when we have the time. And they can be present, representing us at this event, even though we're not there physically, but we're there through our digital twin. This sort of expansion of ourselves virtually through our digital twins is something that's going to happen. In some cases, it's going to be extremely useful when, for instance, taking notes, recording, or doing standard basic actions in our stead, when we do not have the time or the desire to be there ourselves. This can be a very interesting thing, where also our digital twins will be able to interact and exchange information that they will have been loaded with in between themselves so that we don't have to do it ourselves. This is both scary but also very exciting, and I think there's a lot that we will learn, to do using this. But at the same time, as we will be doing this, for instance, I may send my digital twin to attend a conference, for instance, for me, so that I can spend that time with my children or with my partner or with my family, having an excursion and taking, a hike in the mountains for a couple of days. So that will be, I think we're heading for a life which will be multi-layered, where we will have aspects of our lives, of our work, that will be made possible thanks to artificial intelligence and sophisticated technologies. But we will also need to have the no technology moments where we are purely enjoying life and social life physically, with the people we choose.
Right. Yeah, so technology is a double-edged sword. There is so much interesting things which is happening around the world. Whatever was science fiction is now becoming science fact. And I remember this quote of Arte France Cinema. He said that any advancement in technologies is going to be indistinguishable from magic. And I guess that's the space where we are going in. We're just scratching the surface, and all of these technologies are going to converge. It's going to create the new world, and somehow COVID is kind of like, nudged us into that future, and pushed it into the future and said, okay, go figure the world, but don't mess up the world. There are some great things that we've learned from COVID. We've finally understood that, we need to take care of the environment. That 4 or 5 months we were sitting at home, we realized, oh wow, there's great air to breathe. There's no honking. There's less people on the street. You could be more productive, out of home, stuff like that. So there are a lot of positives, and we can spend family time. But there are negatives, obviously, that we've been impacted terribly. The economy is down. The government is sitting because they've got all the money. They don't care a damn about the common people. They talk about stimulus package, which is only going to the banks and the big companies. The common people always suffer. So, it's a weird rant. I'm sorry I'm ranting. But you know what? Getting to VR. So, virtual reality content. I don't know of a single virtual reality film that has made big money or been acquired for a big amount, say like $1 million. When do you see virtual reality or immersive content creators seeing this as a sustainable and thriving career opportunity?
I think this would be directly connected to the spread of ownership of individual headsets. The success of the Quest 1 and probably the Quest 2, which has just been launched, show that there is definitely a growing market and a growing awareness of the use of VR within the standard, audience with individuals. So the more people will have a headset in their possession, the more access they will have to content through aggregated platforms, the more it will spread and people will be ready to spend. When you look at, for instance, the figures that Oculus has announced for the business of selling their content, it's quite impressive. I mean, if you proportion the amount of money that Oculus is, I'm sorry, I don't have the figures in my head right now, but you can look them up. If you equate the amount of money made by Oculus in selling their content to the number of headsets that they have sold, it's quite impressive. It shows that people who are acquiring those headsets do acquire content, a little bit like, the PlayStation model, which is very profitable. So there is a need for those kinds of content, and I'm seeing this directly proportioned to the number of headset equipments. And I think the individual equipment is what is going to drive the market. Individuals buying a headset, generating income from content viewership is something that is happening. at its own pace. Everyone would like it to happen much quicker. For the moment, it's only the bigger productions, the bigger, successes that are making money. But it's good to have successes like Beat Saber, or like the Star Wars content, on Oculus, that are making a lot of money. It's good because there are locomotives that are driving this, but they're not the only ones. I mean, there's like 100 contents that have made over $1 million income, in the last few weeks. So I see it happening. Where it's going to be the success of the Quest 2, the decision of Oculus to drop tethered headsets and go fully on the way of standalones, the launch of Facebook Horizon. All of this is an indication that we're moving towards this market. But I think it goes back to your previous question: how can the smaller producers, the smaller contents, participate in that market? But unfortunately, they will come later. First, there needs to be an ecosystem that is sort of planted for them to join and start reaping the benefits, of this ecosystem.
Right. Yeah. So somehow, the first movers, at times they have an advantage. At times, obviously they fall down, because like I got into VR back in early 2016, and at that point in time, one of my clients asked me if we could build content for them, live action VR content, and they want a stereoscopic VR content. And early 2016, most of the cameras was super expensive. The Nokia Ozo was, I think it's like $60,000-$70,000. And there were other cameras which were way too expensive. Google had the Odyssey array. We somehow got the open source file, and we built our own 16 camera rig here. We built our own robotic dolly, and we produced content. And we were small time filmmakers, but we believed back then that this is going to be the new medium for storytelling. And I still believe that, because the way things are growing, VR, when Oculus launched their first VR headset back in, I think, 2014 or 16, it was, with the hardware, it was priced for over 3,000 plus USD. Right now we have Oculus Quest 2, which is at $299, which is 10x price, which is, it's come down cheaper. And obviously the performance is increased. So yes, I am a complete believer. And that's the reason I've invested in this space. And that's the reason I'm kind of like, having these conversations with people like you, and, trying to create excitement about this technology, because I believe that in another couple of years, with 5G AI converging, we will have a headset maybe like the one which I'm wearing, and maybe we'll dive into the world of Minority Report, where Tom Cruise interacts with content, and it's exciting. It's a super exciting world where your phone and a computer converges. You don't need to carry your phone or a computer or your personal laptop. You have everything in one single wearable device. Now, how soon that happens and how it goes to the masses is when things are going to get very, very interesting. Today, the people who are making most money is the LBE VR space. But even that is sadly disrupted because of COVID. Then there is immersive theater, which you spoke about. So can you talk a little bit more about the location-based virtual reality entertainment and immersive theater, because that's I think they're doing some really cool stuff.
The location-based have been the only truly income-generating market, right? That's where people were spending their money. If you look at a major player like China, in China, most of the VR content, the vast majority of the VR content is consumed in location-based entertainment spaces. Very few people own individual headsets in China yet. This is going to be the new market for them. Unfortunately, the LBE market has been hit very badly, with COVID. So it's sort of at a standstill now. But I believe that the market is now splitting in two, because the things that you can experience in location-based locations are destined to be more sophisticated, have more physical type of installations with vibrating floors, with movement controlled seats and all kinds of devices that there are those with like skydive jumps at the same time as you're experiencing it in VR. So those installations, which are a little bit like fun fair type of installations, are not reproducible at home. So there's going to be a real distinction more and more between those pieces that are designed as attractions, as installations, physical installations, as opposed to those pieces that can be accessed remotely, at home. And that's going to be a distinction in the market. And it's a distinction that is already happening. I'm seeing it, with Venice VR, where we couldn't do any physical installations this year because we were entirely remote. But already for next year, I'm looking at works that are very sophisticated installations, physical installations that cannot be experienced unless you go to those places where they are set up. So the LBE market, I think, is going to specialize more and more in these sorts of things. And the at-home market will be with remotely accessible content. It's a little bit the same thing as what happened with the internet. I remember in the early 90s, I was running a film center in Paris, and we set up, it was the very, very beginning of the internet, and we set up the first internet cafe in Paris at the time. We ran it for about 3 years, and basically people would come to it, to access the internet because they didn't have access from home. But little by little, you could buy subscriptions and you could buy access to the internet from home. So the whole point of having an internet cafe sort of got lost because you could access it from anywhere. But at the time, having those places where you could access internet made a lot of sense. And I think we're in a little bit the same space right now with VR. We're a little bit the equivalent of the VHS time of video, with the internet, where we need the location-based places because very few people still own headsets. We experienced it with Venice VR, where we created 15 satellites in 15 different cities in the world, where we created VR lounges where people could come and access our online selection of 44 pieces. But they had to go to a physical place because they didn't have a headset at home. In a few years from now, and you are right, when the headsets will be glasses, like your glasses or my glasses, it will be very common to have one, and you will not need to go anywhere to experience VR because you'll just put on your VR glasses and you'll be good to go. So we are in that moment where access to VR is still something special and that is not part of the everyday equipment that you use, like your cell phone. It will take a few more years, and maybe you've seen, the images released by Facebook on their VR, on their AR glasses, Project Aria, and it's something that is being tested now. They're planning to commercialize it in 23 at the earliest, between 23 and 25, and these will be glasses, with cameras and everything, and that will start setting the standard for this kind of equipment, and VR will follow. So probably, in 2-3 years from now, we will start having VR headsets, which will not be headsets anymore, but just glasses. And that will, of course, facilitate access to VR content.
Right. Yeah. And that will open up so much business opportunities. It will open up filmmaking, and I hope that, these content creators, or other the entrepreneurs, understand this opportunity and start leveraging this opportunity, because it's so Bollywood, it is known for creating crappy, brainless, over the top content. So, but there is this new breed of Indian filmmakers who are creating content, keeping the international audience in mind, and they are creating some really fantastic and meaningful content. As a successful producer of 2D and VR content, do you see India as a market opportunity? And if given an opportunity, would you create, partner, collaborate, produce content with Indian Bollywood filmmakers?
Yes, I mean the opportunities for collaborations and for co-productions or creative partnerships are endless. And one of the beauties, I think, of the world we live in is that we have access to different cultures in a much easier way. There is a taste for Bollywood style content way beyond India. You know, of course, in the Arab countries, in Africa, in East Africa in particular, there's a lot of taste and craving for Bollywood content. But beyond this, I think there's an aesthetic that is being integrated in other cultures. There's a hybridation of cultures that is happening today, which makes it really, really interesting. You see it in fashion, you see it in cooking, you know, in gastronomy. You see it in a lot of different fields where there's a real interest in exploring what hybridizing cultures can produce. So definitely, I mean, India is a cradle of inspiration for artists and has been, you know, for always. But in contemporary pop culture, there's a lot of that. And I think there is definitely an option for this. There are a few projects coming out of India that I have seen in VR that are very interesting. And some of them are actually being produced and financed by non-Indian partners and in non-Indian funds. So everything is open. Everything is completely open. And the beauty of the VR scene right now is that it still is small, creatively speaking. Creators from around the world who work in inventing the form of immersive media are still few enough that they can connect with each other, they can know each other, and they can exchange with each other. There are, you know, there are Facebook groups, there are WhatsApp groups, there are communities that are sharing daily on what it means to do creative content. And so it's easy to participate in a global conversation. And that includes every country. So yes, I mean, the idea of collaborating and being aware of what happens in India, for instance, is very strong. And for me as a curator, in this case, it's my job to explore, to know, to research what is happening, you know, everywhere in the world, including India. So if you directly or anyone involved, you know, in listening to this podcast is interested in sharing information about what they're doing and what they know is happening in India, by all means, I'm interested.
Lovely, lovely. Yeah, there is some interesting thing happening over here, you know, in space of, content creation, not just, I mean, VR content creation. So I'm going to digress in the last question. So you know, there is this group of people now who are being saying, like I'm talking about Elon Musk, Neil deGrasse Tyson, others, who say we possibly live in a simulated world, and it cannot be it's proved or disproved. What are your thoughts on that, and your last words to the listeners?
Well, this was already, you know, the basic assumption of the Matrix trilogy, the films, you know, by the Wachowski brothers. And this idea that we live in a simulation is brought forward now because it fits the development of virtual universes. It goes alongside this idea that, you know, everything is an illusion. But Shakespeare said it before, you know, all we live in is an illusion. It goes back to a very fundamental existential question, is the mystery of life. You know, we will never have an answer to why we live, why we are here. Of course, there are religions that provide answers, but religions are meta stories. They're big stories. And you can be convinced by those stories, but there's no proof. There's no way you can scientifically prove that we live in a simulation, or that the Buddhist approach or Islam or Christianity are right in their own terms. Until the day, if that day comes where we are shown, the true face of the world, we will be confronted with this bottomless question of why are we here? Why are we alive? Why do we live? Why do we die? That question drives some people crazy. You either accept it, you accept that you don't know and it's a mystery, and you embrace it and you just accept that you don't know, or you go crazy trying to find answers. To me, religions are attempts that have been made to provide answers to people who cannot live without knowing or without having a reason, for living and for dying. Elon Musk and the others suggesting that we live in a simulation belongs to the exact same thing. These are people who are incredibly powerful today, economically speaking. They have reached a level of power that no one ever had before. They're a very, very small group of people, but they're still humans. They're still men and women. They cannot, my interpretation, and this is purely subjective, my interpretation is that they cannot stand having so much power and not being in control of the world. So they're making up a theory that fits them because it provides them with an answer that fits their own perception, and it also gives them authorship on the interpretation of the world. So it's their way of trying to gain even more control over the world by providing us with their interpretation of the everlasting existential question of why are we here. So fine with them if they think it's like that. I personally, I don't need an answer. I don't need an answer to why I live. It's beyond me. And I think my freedom is at another level. And I'm not stressed out with the fact that I don't have that answer. I accept that there is no answer. These people need answers because they need control and they need power. So it's their expression of this.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. Thank you. Thank you. It was a pleasure and honor to speak to you, get your insights on the last few about life in general, and also about immersive technology, storytelling, and where it's going. I personally am super excited about AR, VR, MR. And I think in another few years, with 5G, artificial intelligence converging, there's going to be a new breed of storytellers who's going to take us into the story. Now, how exciting is that going to be? We've so far have been restricted with the 2D platform. Maybe in another 5 years, if we do this again, maybe we could do with the avatars.
Yes.
So that excites me. The possibilities of humans going beyond our capabilities. I think that's what drives me, and that's the reason I keep doing this. And I hope that the world also understands that we're living in a beautiful time. We're living in times of nothing is impossible. If you have a desire and intent, you can make everything possible. That's the reason I have another podcast called Change, I Am Possible, because if you break it down, the word itself says, I am possible. So on that note, thank you once again. It was a pleasure and honor to have you on the podcast. And to my listeners, if you like what you see and hear, please press the subscribe button. Until next time, see you guys. Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.